A coup d'etat in the United States. Now, you might arch your eyebrows and ask, how did I miss that one then? You might not have noticed any tanks in the streets or dissidents thrown in prisons or any firing squads or declaration of martial law. But Elon Musk, the richest man on earth, a South African-born businessman who not a single American citizen has voted for, has been placed in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, with a supposed mandate to slash away government spending. Now, one of Donald Trump's many executive orders instructed all government agencies to grant DOGE full and prompt access to all unclassified agency records, software systems, and IT systems. But note this, DOGE isn't a government agency. It's supposed to be merely advisory, and yet it has been turned into the absolute centerpiece of this entire administration. Now, Musk is now leading a massive purge of the government bureaucracy while seizing control of the Treasury Department's $6 trillion payment system. That now means Musk has his mitts all over the social security numbers and indeed general personal and financial information of American taxpayers. If there is a federal employee who displeases this administration, they can simply cease paying them. Musk has also taken over the General Services Administration, which underpins the basic functioning of federal government agencies, and the Office of Personnel Management, which manages the US Civil Service. What does this all mean? Well, as the Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren put it in a letter to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, controlling the system could allow the Trump administration to unilaterally and illegally cut off payments for millions of Americans, putting at risk the financial security of families and businesses based on political favoritism on the whims of Mr. Musk and those on his team who have worked their way inside. What next? Now, there is US aid to the US government's $40 billion a year international development agency. Now, there are all sorts of good and important leftist critiques of US aid about its role in furthering the interests of US imperialism. Well, that's certainly not Musk's critique, and also, for example, provides assistance in, say, women's health, HIV/AIDS treatment, energy security. We could go on. The point here is there is a coup with no democratic mandate, with a billionaire using his wealth and therefore power to dictate policy to the president. Musk repeatedly declared the agency is a criminal organization and said it was time for it to die, and got Trump to agree to it being shut down. Now, it's been reported that the USA Director for Security and the Deputy Director for Security were fired because they tried to stop DOGE getting access to classified material in restricted areas. Meanwhile, millions of federal government workers face redundancy, with 2 million of them being offered voluntary redundancy. Musk has brought in people from his own companies to oversee cuts, correctly described as lackeys by Wired magazine, which notes that the people now at the top of the Office of Personnel Management include a 21-year-old and someone who just left high school. Now, it should be noted that Musk's companies get billions of dollars from nearly 100 government contracts. Two of his companies account for at least $15.4 billion in such contracts over the last 10 years. To suggest there is a conflict of interest here is putting it exceptionally gently. Now, let's listen to the historian Ruth Ben-Ghiat on why this is a coup.
The speed is very unusual in my study of authoritarian states. It's only really after a coup that you see such a speed, such a obsessive haste to purge a bureaucracy so quickly. Or when somebody's defending themselves, like Erdogan after the coup attempt against him, massive purge immediately. So that's unusual. And then, of course, now Elon Musk may now be a special government employee all of a sudden. But this, as Garrett said, is highly unusual. I don't have another reference point for a private individual coming in, infiltrating, trying to turn government to the benefit of his businesses and locking out federal employees. It is a coup. I'm a historian of coups, and I would also use that word.
As Michael J. Gerhardt, a professor who specializes in constitutional law at the University of North Carolina, said to Al Jazeera, this is perhaps the first time ever someone from outside the government has been so openly given free rein within. He adds, there is no mechanism for keeping Elon Musk in check. In the words of the political scientist Seth Maskett, Musk is a private citizen taking control of established government offices. This is not efficiency, that is a coup. And indeed, as the progressive congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez put it, this is a plutocratic coup. Well, indeed. Musk bankrolled Trump's campaign, handing him approaching $300 billion to ensure his successful election. Here is the painful reality of what is described as right-wing populism, which claims to represent the little guy against the elites, but is in fact an extremely clever ruse to facilitate the entirely naked rule of the rich, by the rich, for the rich, which was already a democracy rigged in favour of Americans with bottomless pockets. Indeed, there was a study about a decade ago which suggested that the US was an oligarchy rather than a democracy. If it was already that, what the hell is this? You've got the likes of the guy who bankrolled the entire presidential campaign, buying power, buying influence, and essentially taking control of the federal government. Now, we might ask, what does Mr. Musk plan to do to the federal government he now has unaccountable control of? Well, let's just think about what he did to the artist formerly known as Twitter, which we are supposed to call X, a crap rebranding effort which itself speaks volumes. Was that a success? I mean, depends on your metric, I guess, doesn't it? I mean, his value has fallen by about 75% since he took it over in 2022. Its number of active users has fallen by tens of millions. Its usability has markedly declined. It is an unchecked cesspit of disinformation, misinformation, and hate and bile. Well, here's why I suppose we can end up debating what the metrics of success is. You see, if your metric is turning X into a political weapon in the service of right-wing extremism, then Musk's takeover of X has been a stunning triumph. Look at the way a bunch of very right-wing lunatics who spread disinformation now, because of the algorithm, because of all the blue tick stuff, because of Musk's favoritism, dominate the app. So if X is the template for what Musk intends to do to the federal government, well, I think we can be pretty clear which direction this is all heading in. But where is all the opposition to this? The Democratic leadership are cowed, without any obvious fighting spirit, unable to decide what they even stand for or believe in. What about the media? Well, look, so many Americans get their information from social media, and the tech pros are at the heart of the core of Donald Trump version 2. There's Musk, obviously, but look at Mark Zuckerberg redrafting his content moderation policies after Trump wrote in his latest book that the owner of Facebook and Instagram and the like would spend the rest of his life in jail if he politically displeased him. Imagine something like that happened in Russia. Some media boss threatened with jail if he went against Putin and then bends the knee to Putin. Well, we'd call that out for what it was, wouldn't we? You can see how Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, pulled the paper's endorsement of Kamala Harris, apparently fearing Trumpian retribution. He's also splashing out a vast amount of money on some absurd hagiographic documentary about Melania Trump, handing her a load of money in the process. We can see how the LA Times also refused to endorse someone, which it, again, would normally just endorses the Democrats. Note the lawsuits Trump is filing against media organizations, and successfully so. A man who has repeatedly threatened to lock up his opponents may well start a whole range of vexatious investigations into media and political critics, not least with Kash Patel, his pick for FBI installed, who apparently has a so-called enemies list. All of this as well will have a chilling effect. And I know it's having a chilling effect because people within the US media are beginning not to say things because they fear the consequences. For those who thought US democracy, however flawed it always was, would never die, well, a brutal appointment with reality now beckons. We can see the playbook in other countries, like Hungary, ruled by Viktor Orban, a pin-up for Trump and his allies. No tanks on the street, no firing squads, but democracy was simply dismantled by attrition behind closed doors, from allies buying up newspapers to a law on foreign funding to harass, intimidate and silence critics in civil society and the media. The constitutional court being rigged in his favour. Well, Trump doesn't even need to do that because he's got the Supreme Court. Trump and Musk are significantly more extreme than even the gruesomely autocratic Orban who radicalised in power. This is heading in only one direction, and that is towards the end of democracy as you and I understand it. Well, on that cheery note, please like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts and your comments. Good for the algorithm. Get the word out because, I mean, I think eventually the algorithm just generally everywhere will be changed so that you will hear less and less from those who speak out. Help us in the meantime, offer an alternative to the hellish situation that I'm afraid human civilization is veering towards. Patreon.com/ODesert4. We're expanding operations across social media platforms before, they become probably impossible to get any message out to. But we persevere in the meantime. Listen to this podcast. I'll speak to you soon.